Let us pray. May the words of my mouth and the meditation of all our hearts be acceptable in your sight, O God, our strength and our hope. Amen. Earlier this week, I was doing a service with some seniors, and I read that passage from the New Revised Standard Version. And I said, this Sunday is the celebration of Pentecost, which is traditionally known as the birthday of the church. And one of the seniors said, "Is it? I've never heard that before." And I thought, is it? Is it the birthday of the church? How is it the birthday of the church? There's no party. There's no cake. There's absolutely none of the traditional trappings of what we would consider a birthday. In fact, they were having a celebration of something else entirely. So how is it a birthday? No? Okay, let's talk about it then. How is it a birthday? If the disciples had all spent so much time with Jesus, they'd witnessed Jesus' death and resurrection, they'd hung around with Jesus a little while longer, and Jesus had finally said, "It's time for me to go, but don't worry. Don't worry, you'll be fine. Just go to Jerusalem and wait. Something will happen." And then sure enough, it does. And then what? We all found ourselves sitting in pews, listening to someone stand at the front and talk. The thing is, the part of the story that birthed the church didn't birth any of the trappings that we know. It didn't show any of the signs of anything that we are doing right at this very moment, really. In fact, historically, there are very definitely moments when the church was definitely not being the church that was birthed on this day, in this story. See, I think what happened in the story isn't that some great force came from somewhere else and zapped them. I think what happened was, here's a new one. They were Jesus-fied. Do you know, how often do I talk about how Jesus, the point of Jesus is to show us how the divine spirit is alive in us. Right? Not just the earthiness of our humanity, but the divine spirit is alive in us. That's the point of Jesus. Jesus is essentially trying to show us what's already in us, and that we are capable of all of the things that Jesus is capable of. The difference is, Jesus is aware of that divine spirit and connected to it. Isn't that what happens in this story? Suddenly the disciples are aware of the divine spirit that's in them. They've connected. They've plugged in. They've been Jesused. I don't know how many different ways I can use the word Jesus, but I'm going to try them all. Because I think that's what happens in the story. It's not that an outside force does something to them. It's that an inside force connects with God, connects with the Spirit. And then what are they able to do? They are suddenly able to communicate with people in a way that connects with those people and their identity, with who they are. In the story, it says that they spoke in languages of the native land of the people. You know, where they came from, where they belonged, where their identity was born. They were able to connect with people in a way that embraced who they were. And those people felt a moment of belonging. A moment where they could hear the story in a way that opened their heart to hearing the Spirit in the story. In the account in the book of Acts, it says, I think the deeds of God's power, something like that, is what the disciples were sharing. But isn't that just like having your heart open to the Spirit and understanding, finding a connection to God? So let's recap for a second. The disciples suddenly found themselves connected to the Spirit in a way that Jesus tried to show us we are. And the first thing they did was embrace people for who they are. The first thing they did was try to create relationship in a way that doesn't require you to be me. It requires me to be vulnerable and open enough to understand you for who you are. Does that sound like the church you know? Because if it doesn't, we aren't being the church that was born at Pentecost. Lots of churches, I think, will talk about how important it is to be more tolerant. And that's a word Jesus never used. Jesus never asked you to be tolerant, ever. He just asked you to love. And there's a difference. When you're tolerant of people, it means there's something to be tolerant of. That you think there's something that you need to be tolerant of. And all Jesus said was, no, there isn't. To love, like Jesus, isn't to be tolerant of anything at all. It's to simply embrace somebody for who they are. In every way. To be vulnerable enough to connect with people and welcome them to you. That's what's happening in the story. The disciples are finding a way to connect with people, to embrace them for who they are, to love them, and to create a relationship in love that allows for understanding and connectedness. Not everybody heard that. Some people thought they were just drunk or crazy or, who wants to hear that? Didn't stop the disciples, though. It didn't stop them on that day, and it didn't stop them in the days ahead. It didn't stop the people who did hear, who were open to the Spirit. Otherwise, we wouldn't be here. Something new was born. It may not be what this is, but it's what's at the heart of what this needs to be, what this should be. It's what's at the heart of what the United Church of Canada should be. That's why it's a birthday. It's not an anniversary. Something new was created. And something new was created in a way that exemplifies a particular word that the United Church then continued to use. Covenant. When you enter into a covenant with a minister as a congregation, and with the larger church, now represented by the region, it's a covenant. It's not a contract. You You can't fire me. But it's not a contract. You don't kind of sign on to it thinking, oh, this is what we're going to get. You sign on to it to create a new thing, a ministry that is shared by me and you and the wider church. That's what we do. You can fire me, by the way. It's just a different process. But contracts are about how you put in X expecting to get Y back, right? And you may very well feel like, I'm expecting to get something back out of this. You may well feel that. But the fact of the matter is, we aren't doing that. We are creating a new thing every day, every time we gather. We are creating a new thing in the same way that the story of Pentecost does that too. We are reaching out to people, engaging people, embracing people for who they are. That's the covenant. That's what we've created. There are all sorts of additional pieces and working parts and things, but at the heart of it is that. At the heart of the United Church is that. A new thing was created. It was, when we were talking earlier, Wes was right on the money with, that would never work because people are too different. But they found common ground. Common enough ground to say, hey, these things are unique and distinct about us, but together you can see right from the start where the idea of unity and diversity comes from. The power of creating this new thing doesn't come from sameness. It comes from all of us, all of our unique individual contributions to being the church. That's why the disciples spoke different languages in this story. It wasn't the people who were changed to hear their words. It was the disciples who were changed to speak to the people. Because they connected with the Spirit. They connected with the Spirit that Jesus tries so hard to show us we have in us already. It's something we let out, not in. And that's what creates the newness, the new thing. I had a short video clip I'd like you to watch of somebody who talks about this very thing. She's gonna say in the middle of it, she's gonna say something about obedience to God, and I just want to make sure that we're all on the same page here, because she doesn't mean doing what you're told. She means connectedness with God. This is just a little piece of a larger thing, but she'll talk about that elsewhere. But just when you hear that word, try not to hear it quite so clearly as being commanded so much as being connected. Graham, please.
I hear Christians talk about the Pentecost and the Spirit. What does the Spirit do?
Oh, the Spirit. Breathtaking. I've seen it in so many contexts, but in the upper room, during Pentecost, it comes down as fire. Spirit is also part of who we are because we have fire shut up in our bones. Okay, so the fire shut up in our bones recognizes the fire that descends upon them, and the Spirit lands on the women and the men in that room, and they're never the same again. And you know they're never the same again because Jesus is gone. And the smart thing to do at that point is to disperse into the village, say nothing more, mind your business, and tend your own garden. But each of them takes the radical path towards sacrifice, and ultimately many of them death, because what they've seen, what they've been imbued with, has released the fire within them, and it cannot be quenched by anything other than obedience to God.
What's that fire do?
It's a passion that whatever gift you've been given, that you are to disperse throughout this earth, it brings joy to the giving. So I can't not write. I couldn't stop writing if my life depended on it. When I stop for practical reasons, it keeps writing in my brain. So there is a fire, a passion that's given to me about writing that maybe other people don't have, but they have another kind of passion.
But that fire and spirit is available to everyone?
Absolutely everyone. Because of that divine spark. What do you think divine spark is? It's fire. Fire. Shut up in our bones. It's like the flame on Kennedy's grave. It's always lit. Not necessarily at a high level, but it's there. All you need to do is turn toward it, accept that gift that you were given, and phew.
So people think it's been put out by things. Nothing can put it out.
You can't put out God's divine spark. That's impossible. You can cover it up with a lot of stuff. You can allow suffering that is normal in this life to dim it. You can let a lot of things cover it up, dim it, make it inaccessible to your everyday life. Or you can stop. You can still go to work, take care of your kids, cook dinner, but know that it's there and say, I am willing to be set completely on fire for your sake. And I will take the gift I've been given on fire into the world.
So that's the message of Pentecost, I think. The flames, the fire's in you already. It's in your bones. It's at the heart of who you are. Jesus shows us that. It's there. What this story of Pentecost tells us is how it can burst into flame, how it can be passion in the world, how you have a gift. I think that's what that bit about them sharing the God's deeds of power in a language they understand, I think that's what that's all about. It's finding what that gift is in us that we want to share and bringing it to the world. And when we do that together, when we gather as a church and do that together, we create community and we create the possibility of great things happening, of caring for people, of bringing justice to the world. We have an opportunity to do that as a church. So, the National Church's birthday is on Tuesday. How will you celebrate that? How will you bring the passion that's in you into the world?